So, to begin with, can you just talk about what your life was like before Vietnam and before you went into the service? Just where you grew up.
I grew up in Buffalo, Wyoming. I was raised strict Catholic. Went to catechism and CYO and all that stuff. And then in high school, I worked on a Black Angus ranch, did a little rodeo and stuff like that.
How did you decide on what branch of the military to go into? How did you?
My dad was a pro at the Powder River Country Club, and I started golfing when I was 9. And the senator at that time, Dick Green, lived just a block down the street from us, and he was a regular at the golf course. And he asked me when I graduated what I was going to do, and I said, probably go in the Army. And he says, don't you sign anything yet. I got to get back to you. And Red Jacoby was the athletic director at the University of Wyoming. So 2 weeks later, I had a full golf scholarship down there. And it only lasted a year. I went into secondary education. That's what I was going to major in. And after that, I didn't have a high enough grade, so I got my draft notice, and when I got my draft notice, I didn't want to go to Vietnam, so I enlisted, not knowing I was going there anyway.
So, can you talk about what training was like for you? And
Training?
Mm-hmm.
Training was a breeze, because I was we got wrestling in our school my last year, and I took 3rd in state, and we just worked out all the time. A friend of mine and I stacked 3,000 bales a day at 2 cents a bale, and so we were not only the 2 richest kids in town, but we were pretty buffed out and stuff like that. So basic training was a breeze.
And what was it like when you first went to Vietnam? What did you do there? What was your assignment?
I was supposed to be a field postal operator. I went to AIT for that. But anybody that went to Nam was their first MOS was 11 Bravo. That was infantry. Although we didn't get infantry MOS, I stayed in the postal for a couple months, and then I started volunteering for different things, and I ended up a squad leader eventually on a reactionary squad. We had 12 guys in my squad, and they put us way down by the wire in the compound and just left us alone. So we'd go out at night and do our thing, and then come back in the morning.
So what would an average day be like for you in Vietnam?
Average day, well, it was hot and muggy, so except for the monsoon, it was just wet all the time. But get up at daylight, and we'd have a few drinks and stuff during the day, and then sleep it off, and then get ready to go out at night. That was the average day.
So, do you have a luckiest day in Vietnam?
Luckiest? Yeah, I had a lucky day. I don't remember dates or anything hardly over there. In fact, there's a lot of it I don't remember at all. But we had a 122 rocket came in and took the last 2 rows of sandbags off of our bunker, and then blew up behind us. That was a lucky day. Because when one of the 122s blew up, you could put a Jeep in the hole and not see the top of it.
Do you have a worst day in Vietnam?
A what?
A worst day?
Worst day? I don't know. I think they were all that way. I knew when I got off the plane at Cameron Bay, it was like 110 or 112 degrees, and the stench of that country, that's always embedded in my mind. That and the smell of blood, those things won't go away.
What was it like for you? Did you create lots of friendships, or, did your friends come through it? Did you come through it?
I lost four guys there, and I see two of them splattered on the wall quite a few times during the day. They took a direct mortar round, but the guys in my squad were all real tight. We all looked out for each other. If you didn't, then they got rid of you or something.
What was it? How many years did you end up staying in the service in Vietnam?
2 years, 3 months, and 16 days.
How was it like for you coming home?
Coming home was like when I first went to Nam. It was just, it had changed. Everything had changed so much that people they weren't too crazy about us at all. When I got off the plane, when I de-roased out of Seattle, they told us to get to the airport. Don't be loitering around, just get to the airport. But when there'd be 3 or 4 of us sitting at a table at the airport, or go in there to sit at a table, then people would get up and move away from us. So never thought too much about it. I just thought they're a bunch of rude asses anyway.
It had to be so surreal. I mean, you were living this incredible life of combat,
Mm-hmm.
and then to just come home.
Yeah. The reason I stayed so long is when I left there, my first love, we were going to get married when I got out of the service, and my best buddy was going to keep an eye on her for me and stuff, and he got her, she never smoked dope before, hardly ever drank, and he got her on wacky weed and booze and knocked her up, and so I had a death wish. I volunteered for just about anything I could. I didn't want to come back home.
What do you think people should know about Vietnam?
That it wasn't our fault. The politicians sent our ass over there. We had nothing to do with it. Otherwise, you'd end up in a pen. Either that or run to Canada and hope that Wild Willie Clinton would let you back in, like he did.
When you gather with other veterans, and when you have time with other veterans, how is that kind of, why is that important? How is that feeling?
It's a brotherhood that nobody will understand unless you're part of it, because we understand each other, and we can talk freely about it. And you try to explain that to the regular civilian population, and first of all, they're not interested. And the ones that are doing it, it seems like just to be cordial, to act interested or something. But I haven't found too many that have done that. Most kids don't even know where Vietnam was.
When you got back and restarted your life and here, how did you end up here? How did you?
I came back to, my dad had a Frigidaire Whirlpool RCA store in that little town of Buffalo, and I remember in high school I helped him deliver some washer and dryer and refrigerator out to trying to think of his name now. I had it on the tip of my tongue. Robert Taylor. He was the star in the True Detectives. And when I came home, it was early in the morning. I didn't want to wake my folks up, so there was a cafe there called a Lariat Cafe, and there was a pickup there, an old power wagon with a horse trailer behind it, and so I went in there and I sat down at the counter, and there he was, and we started BSing because he remembered me from delivering appliances and stuff, and he had cow shit on his boots and everything else, and just a normal guy. So that was my first day home. I think by then I was self-medicating pretty good.
When we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, what do you think people don't understand that who have not experienced it? What's it like for you? How do you live with it? How do you come home from it? How do you?
I worked with guys that were a little on the ignorant side that would call us crybabies, and because we were talking that way, you know. But the last guy that did that, I told him, why don't you go over to the Black Wall in Washington, D.C. and call one of them guys a crybaby. I said, they'll cut you in a lot of pieces. So, you know, by then you were real careful who you talked to and what you talked about. I didn't know, I had 13 co-workers in maintenance up there in different departments that were Vietnam veterans, and you could always tell a Vietnam veteran because they were real conscientious. They did a good job. They were on a mission. They got their jobs done every day, and then never put two and two together. Nobody knew who. We didn't even know each other until I don't know. My accident precipitated the Ptsd. I had a 4,000-pound roll come down on my hand and cut my fingers off and stuff, and all I seen was a rocket coming in. And after that, I was seeing 3 counselors, and they put me on meds and all that kind of stuff.
How old were you when you went into the war in Vietnam?
I spent the 1 year in college, so I was still 19, I think, when I went in.
I just can't imagine.
Well, you know, it's funny, I see, when we've gone on vacation, I see these young little kids all dressed in uniform and stuff, and I always say to my wife, I said, boy, that's sad when they take a little guy like that over there. Shit, we're the same thing. But when you go through basic, you're a man and you're a killer when you come out of there, you know.
I think about all of these young men from Wyoming and Minnesota and Wisconsin, you know, in heat, in jungle rot, and how did you guys survive?
It was just a everyday thing you just did.
When we talk about everyday life in Vietnam, in this cool, comfortable, we think it's hot when it's 90.
Yeah.
I mean, how does it compare when you were living in it there? I mean, 120 degrees, 110.
Yeah,
and humid.
I don't know what hell was like. I haven't been there yet, but I remember the 504th MPs went down and they got a deuce and a half full of beer from the black market, and the bottoms of the cans were rusty. It's the old steel cans, you know, and they brought them up to Camp Holloway there and selling them for a penny a can. So you get a case of beer and a penny back, but when you pop the top, half of the foam came out first, and we were trying to cool some of them down with fire extinguishers, but we had to save that to freeze the rats when they had rats that you could damn near ride around the place. But they'd get in a wheel well of in the wheel of a truck, and they'd drive it forward and then drive it back, and they'd try to go up and back, and then while the other guy pull a fire extinguisher off and freeze them. We had the most rat kills in our outfit.
So you're dealing with just awful living conditions, and you're dealing with danger, and you guys were out at night.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been unbelievably dangerous.
Well, yeah, your ass would be awful tight sometimes. We'd go, if anything happened to come through, and you'd always see a blood trail or something if you killed one of the dinks, you know, they'd drag their dead off so you couldn't get a coop count, but we'd make a little sweep where we were had some action or something, and if there was somebody there, we'd pick them up, throw them in a 3/4 ton and drive them back to base camp. So, and they'd dump them out by the gate there and put a sign there saying that this is what happened to you if you're a VC or a sympathizer.
As a squad leader, what was your what were your responsibilities?
Just making sure that everybody was ready to go and had all their gear ready.
Would you get like new guys every once in a while? Or
I got new guys because I stayed there so long. I talked a couple of them into staying with me for an extra 6 months, and then they said, "You're crazy," and they left. Then I'd get new ones in.
How would you prepare these guys for what they were gonna deal with?
Just give them, tell them what to do, and tell them you usually only got 1 or 2 chances, so better listen up. You learn pretty fast, I think.
Is there anybody who stands out in your mind? Somebody who?
That I served with?
Yeah. Somebody.
Yeah.
Who came home with you, or
I got a little captain over there. He had. I slipped up and told my counselor down there at the VA I still wanted to kill him. He kept me from getting rank for about a year. Just a little weasel. He bloused his boots, and he had thick glasses, and just a tiny little shit that walked around like a rooster, But then guys in the group say, don't mention killing anybody, because then they'll have you over there and looking at another shrink, so I just shut up. But that one stands out in my mind.
Not in a good way.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I think it's just amazing what you guys went through and what you came home to, and I am honored beyond belief to be able to interview you.
Oh, good.
But I would like you to make sure that you have an opportunity to say what you feel is important, what you'd like people to learn from it, or learn from you, or...
The one thing, the big thing, the common thread with all of us is that I think the first year I was there, we were winning the war. They'd take a hill and they'd put a fire base on it, and then pretty soon they'd take it all off of there, and they'd let the dinks back up on the hill, and they'd dig in, and then they wanted to take it again. I know at Dock Toe, the 173rd Airborne lost a company the first day because they were all dug in on the hillside, and you're going uphill and they're throwing shit downhill. It's just stuff like that. So we didn't trust the government very well, and now they're trying to cut our benefits, and I've got a lot of friends that were over there that saw a lot of stuff, can't even get their I talked to a service officer, said that they're just doing 2014 claims now. Hell, we're all getting up there 70 years old or whatever, and might not ever see a claim. And now they're talking about adding our Social Security to our VA benefit and then taxing that. They're talking about our spouses, when we die, they get $1,100 and something a month for the rest of their life, plus medical insurance. They're talking about cutting that out. This is all stuff that people are trying to bring up to the legislature and stuff like that. So, yeah, our trust for the government doesn't hold any water. That's the most common thing.
That's a heck of a way to say thank you.
Yeah. Well, they started having all the parades for the Rocky guys and stuff like that, and that was fine. But then they started. It's almost like they felt ashamed of themselves, so they had to recognize us. It was like a forced thing, and that's the way just about all of us felt. I wouldn't go to a parade if they had one.
Bob was saying that when he came back from Vietnam, he felt like, I'm quoting him, a turd in a punch bowl.
Yeah. You stood out like a turd in a punch bowl. Exactly.
He said there was just nobody hiring Vietnam vets, nobody...
No. It was almost like everything they've done to us has been forced. And the Iraqi and the Gulf War vets wouldn't have nothing if it hadn't been for us, breaking the waves for them. They wouldn't have had absolutely nothing. The guy that pulled a cover off of Saddam Hussein in that spider hole over there, he filed a claim when he came back. They didn't even have him recorded as being in the military. And he's got all this documentation and stuff, and they denied him, and here it was on national TV. That's all. It was just stuff like that.
So all of the Vietnam veterans are still dealing with the results of their service.
Oh, absolutely.
The Agent Orange cancer?
Yep.
Now?
Yep.
And what else?
Most of it's the PTSD. I don't think a day goes by where I don't think of Vietnam at least 2,000 times a day. It's just, it's the biggest part of my life. If I happen upon a car wreck or something like that, and there's a smell of blood, everything flashes back, because blood smells different than other stuff.
Oh yeah.
We put this. We drug one of them zippers in one day in the morning. They were going to court-martial us. We had him laying in the back of the 3/4 ton. He's dead. He was just a skinny little thing, and he had the bottom of his sandal had a kind of a big wear mark in it. So we hung a little sign there. It said I'd walk a mile for a camel, and then we took some axle grease and put around his eye and said I'd rather fight than switch. And then all them cigarette sayings, and they wanted to give us all Article 15s for it wasn't destroying the enemy, it was defacing the enemy. But they could take one of our Marines out past the wire and skin him alive and listen to him scream all night. That was okay. They made big pits with snakes in them, pungy stakes and everything in there, and that was, we couldn't do that. So our hands were tied pretty much. The last year I was there, if you got incoming fire, you had to identify the fire, call in for permission to return fire. Yeah, it was pretty sad.
So you felt like your hands were tied, and they weren't?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Huh.
They weren't afraid to court-martial you for any of that kind of stuff. When Lieutenant Calley went through My and all of the civilians and stuff, you didn't know which ones were VC or VC sympathizers or anything like that. We all thought he was going to get decorated.
Yeah.
And here he was, hung out to dry. During the Tet Offensive at Camp Holloway, three of the barbers that used to be on the compound were shot dead coming across the wire with satchel charges on their back. And every once in a while I'd have one of them guys skin my neck with a razor, and they'd be, you couldn't understand them, but they'd be giggling to each other and whatever, and then they got done, they had some kind of orange stuff they'd slap on your face. It was like kerosene, and that was your shave, you know. That was really top-notch stuff. But we thought, I mean, who would have thought that there was sympathizers inside the compound that would put a tripwire across one of the boardwalks there going into a hooch and blow the legs off of one of the chopper pilots or whatever. And that was okay.
In this anniversary, do you think we've learned anything? Do you think we...
No, because they're doing it over and over again over and across the pond in the sand. Same thing. They could have ended that war, and they could have went through there and ended that thing so fast that... And a lot of us were in Cambodia. A friend of mine, he just got awarded. I wrote a couple letters for him and stuff. He was in Cambodia. And when you were in Cambodia, then they didn't make a record of your service over there. And he was out of there for, I don't know, since '69. And he just got his award last year because it was top secret to be in Cambodia. Well, hell, my base camp was 10 miles from Cambodia. They could shoot the 122s right from the border and land them in you.
Is there anything else you would like to add that you feel is important that I didn't give you a chance to say?
I don't know. They talked about starting a mentor program for the Gulf War vets and have us mentor them. And somebody in the government apparently thought that would dredge up too many things, so that wouldn't work. And the thing is, it's a warrior talking to a warrior, you know. It would work. But that went by the wayside. So consequently, that's why there's a lot of suicides, a lot more today than there was with Vietnam veterans.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was too easy.
That would have made a heck of a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, yeah. See, the thing that what I understand from, and I've talked to some Gulf War vets that came before they were shipped back over here. They came back into the rear, and they wined them and dined them, and for a couple days, and asked them how things going. Oh, really good. Well, that's what they put on the report. They're doing really good. Yeah, there's no problems there. There's no PTSD. There's nothing there. And so then they come back and they go to the VA for help, and oh, we can't see you for another 2 months. We're all booked up. They go home and shoot themselves. Yeah, it's a crazy world. You'd think that serving your country like that would count for something, but it really doesn't.
They don't put that on the recruiting posters, do they?
No, they don't. In fact, when the VA was giving out, when they did give you an award, they didn't want, like my buddy Gunny, Bob, they put him down as schizophrenic, whatever the other half of that is. They didn't want to put PTSD down because they didn't want to be labeling their people with PTSD. Because see, World War II was shell shock and battle fatigue. That's all PTSD. My ex-father-in-law served in France and Germany, and he had PTSD so bad his whole family just thought they just called him a ornery bastard, and none of them knew what he had, what he's dealing with.
No treatment, no help.
No, nothing. When you get too old, they give you an ibuprofen and a diaper and tell you to shut up. Go home and die. Make life miserable.
You'd like to think that everything gets better, that we learn something, that we make improvements.
Not at all. History repeats itself over and over and over. It'll never change. When you're 90, you'll be down here interviewing somebody that was in the 2nd grade going to war.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Ken Burns and the Vietnam War and this whole thing? Is it going to dredge up a lot of stuff for people?
What we're doing?
Does it matter? No, I mean when the Ken Burns big long documentary comes out about the Vietnam War, do you think a lot of people will have memories come up of?
Oh, the ones that have been there.
Yeah.
Sure. They got memories every day anyway. The only part of it is we've got a couple guys that are Vietnam veterans that they don't have any documentation as far as what they did or this and that and the other, and they want to be part of the guys that did. And so that's where you get you get a lot of made up stuff and stuff like that. I don't know how many times I've gone into a store with my hat on or whatever, and I tried to go to Vietnam. They wouldn't let me go. I had an ingrown toenail and blah, 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 blah. And they were taking anybody back then. Didn't matter.
I can't see out of one eye, and couldn't back then either.
I know. I call him Ray Charles when we're out hunting. I said, "Hey, Ray, do you see the antelope? Use your other eye."
And if he still got in to shoot left?
That's why they made him machine gunners, because he couldn't see how to sight a rifle.
And if he still ended up in Vietnam, certainly Mr. Ingrown Toenail could have.
Yep. There was guys that wore panties. They'd pull them down and give them the finger wave anyway. It didn't matter. Bedwetters, same thing. Basic
Doesn't
training.
matter.
No. Wet the bed, you sleep in it. That's all. You're gonna go marching the next day anyway. Just a lot of cannon fodder that went over there.
So when you flew in to Vietnam, did you, what was your initial impression? Like when the door opened and you're in...
On that old hot, I thought, holy man, hope it ain't like this all the time. But you'll always smell that. Even down in Minneapolis, they got the Vietnamese neighborhood and the Hmongs, and I don't know, down in St. Paul's, there's a Hmong community and Vietnamese down there, and they've still got the carts out in the curbs. The mom and son still have their straw hats. They got the beetle nut teeth that are black, and that same stench. You don't know if they're cooking up a cat or a dog or a monkey or whatever they're doing, but it all smells the same.
And it takes you right back there.
Oh man. Yep. Just like you never left. That's just stuff that, and the VA said, oh, we think we have a cure for PTSD. What we're going to do is we're going to have you dredge everything up and then talk about it every day, and it'll go away. Well, it don't go away. You think about it that many times a day, and it still don't go away, so,
So, I mean, is that what everybody just has to know, that this stuff doesn't go away? It just lives on?
Yeah. Once you got it, there's no cure for PTSD. Not at all. The only help there is like the old guys used to come back from World War II in Korea. They would treat them down at Minneapolis, the ones here or anywhere, I guess. They called it the Thorazine shuffle. They'd fill them up with Thorazine and throw a diaper on them, and they'd shuffle down the hallways like that, drooling, and they had a bib on them so that they didn't have to deal with them.
But that's not a cure either.
Oh no, not even close.
So, advice for veterans who are coming, the Iraq War veterans, the Gulf veterans?
I'd say go and file a claim right away. At least get into the VA and get yourself a good shrink, and get into a group of like people, veterans, that understand you and you understand them, so that you have a little common ground anyway. That'd be the first thing I'd tell them.
What does group do for veterans?
Oh, that's a place where you can go and talk about anything, talk about the war, talk about anything else, and we all can relate because we all been there, done it. And even if it isn't talking about the war, it's still all related because that's the behavior that we have.
And just that support and that knowing that you're talking to somebody who gets it.
Yep, everybody understands. There's guys in our group that if they didn't have the veterans in their group, they wouldn't go anyway. That's one attractive thing, is that you can go there and feel free, and everybody looks forward to going. I mean, our group, Monday morning rolls around, we're all down there.
So, for all of those families of the guys out there, all of the families, all of the kids, all of the spouses, I mean, do they understand?
Well, like my daughter, she did a lot of papers in high school on Vietnam, and she wanted me to go speak, I don't know, numerous times, but I never did. But I got a collection of stuff. I got some battle flags and I got some hand-to-hand stuff. I got, the VC would break off the air stems on a 2.5. That's a 2.5 ton truck, because they're brass. They'd break the air stem off. That was solid brass, just looked like a little tiny pipe. And where the air went into the tube, they'd tap the threads down so they didn't scrape their mouth, and they'd get 2 hits of opium or 2 hits of weed in there. They had, most of them would carry 2 little plastic bags tucked under their string or belt, whatever they had, and they would have, they'd have one of them little pipes with their dope, and then they'd have another little bag with dried fish heads and rice. And that was their little lunch break. Even the Arvins, that kind of got me at first too. They hold hands all the time, and it was not. That's just what they do over there. But they'd be smoking their weed, and we couldn't smoke it unless we snuck it. So.
So, did you guys get breaks over there? When you
Breaks?
Like breaks in the action, like where you were able to leave and like.
Yeah, you get.
Leave.
You get after 6 months, you'd get a week's. You could go on R&R for a week. You could go to Singapore, Bangkok, Australia. Vung Tau was an in-country R&R place. I never got a chance to go down there, but. And then after your year is up, they give you 30 days. You can go back stateside, recoup, rest up, and come back for another tour.
So what were those like for you? Did you get, your leave? Did you get R&R? Did you take your 30 days or?
Well, what I remember of it, it was fun. You self-medicate a lot.
But then you have to go back to reality.
Yeah. I remember going back to the airport, my second tour over there. I bought a little snub-nosed 22. I had that in my dress screens, and I had 2 pints of Canadian Club in my inside of my pocket, one on each side. Plus, I was drunk when I got on the plane, and a lot of people travel that way, going back over there. A lot of us didn't think we're coming back, so you just really didn't care.
So when you went back for your second tour, you knew exactly what you were in for.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That had to take like bravery beyond bravery.
I was attached to the 4th Infantry for over a year at Pleiku, and then I volunteered on Operation Oregon. And they touted that as being as big of a day as D-Day was in World War II. So we loaded up and went down to Chu Lai and replaced the Marines there. And I got an ARCOM there decoration. Was there for over a year. Then the reason I had some oddball numbers at the end is they were given, if you extended 6 months and that included the period of your discharge, then you could get an early out. So I did, but I only had 3 months and 16 days left, so I spent them over there. Beat the hell out of polishing boots. Had a lot of guys come from Germany there that just got tired of those IG inspections and stuff like that.
Well, I can't feel like it means anything after what you.
No. If you couldn't get resupplied or anything like that, there's always boots laying around that you could find a pair to slide into or whatever. And then once you got jungle rot and stuff, that never goes away. I was tested for Agent Orange. I had symptoms of that back in '73. And then one of the other jobs my squad had over there is we get a bunch of prisoners in, and we had to hold them there at Camp Schmidt until they could get transportation down to the prison. And they weren't afraid of anything except a shotgun, so I had a riot gun and had them fill in sandbags until they got ready to go, and then load them up and haul them down to the prison. They were treated pretty good, even though you wanted to trip and squeeze one off once in a while.
I can imagine. You knew that our guys weren't being treated as well where they were.
You didn't know. You didn't know what. I'd look at him and wonder how many of us did he kill, or it always went through my mind. I'd sit there and try to analyze one of them prisoners and see what damage he did, and they'd sit there and grin at you with their black teeth and
just an entirely different.
Oh, there's a whole different world there. Yeah.
So when you came home and you had this kind of, I don't know, it seems like you guys went through all of that and there was no welcome home.
No.
And worse than that, you couldn't even wear your uniform.
No, they said get into civilian clothes when you can, so that, because they knew what was happening there. You're getting egged and tomatoed and spit on and called names. And
were you ever?
I was with some guys. They threw some eggs at us up there in Seattle.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Man.
I always heard the baby killer thing. Baby killers. And those people that protested, they didn't have the slightest idea what was going on. It wasn't our fault. We're just doing what we were told to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're under orders.
You bet.
It's not like you can pick and choose your assignments.
No. I got sunburnt real bad one time over there. It was on the 4th of July, and they wanted to give me an Article 15. I had blisters on the bottoms of my back of my legs that were just like a water balloon, and they'd pop, and water would drain out of them, and they were going to give me an Article 15 for not being able to perform my natural duties and destroying government property. Imagine that?
No.
Yeah, that's how chicken shit they were.
I feel like you guys came through hell.
We did, I think. Got good meds today. I'm happy.
I so appreciate your service. I appreciate that
Well,
you
thanks.
went through hell for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And thank you for doing this interview.
Sure.